The Baker Mayfield saga has been a ridiculous one in Cleveland for quite a while. If you are not a Browns fan or have not been following the Browns, I'll let you know right now. I am a Browns fan. I do cover the Browns on my main channel. Go subscribe to that. YouTube.com/Quincy Carrier. So I am deep into this. So all the Baker Mayfield stuff since he decided to sit out that last game to where we are right now has been kind of a wild ride, right? And not the good kind of wild ride. And there's been a number of theories, a number of conspiracies onto why the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. That stoked even more fire on the flame. And now we're getting to the point to where I think people are taking either their negative feelings about the Cleveland Browns organization because they either traded for Deshaun Watson, or their negative feelings about the Cleveland Browns organization because they don't want to continue to have Baker Mayfield be their starting quarterback. One of those is more reasonable than another, but that's a whole nother conversation to get into. But nonetheless, I think people have gone so far in their disdain towards the Cleveland Browns that they're starting to disrespect players that are not those two guys, right? Like, those two dudes are in the storylines all the time, but now I think it's getting disrespectful. What is it? What that I mean by disrespect? Well, there's this kind of narrative out there, right? That if the Cleveland Browns don't have Deshaun Watson, or for whatever reason Baker Mayfield out there, that they're going to be the worst team in the NFL or something drastic like that, right? People don't think that the Browns are going to be like a solid team without a quarterback. They think, hey, if they don't have a franchise top 5 guy, then they're not going to make the playoffs. And I know people tell me like all the time that you can't make the playoffs without a top 5 quarterback, but there's 6 seeds. Do the math on that one. But nonetheless, well, there's actually 12 seeds in the entire NFL, but I ain't even gonna get into that math. That's too much for some of y'all. All right, but nonetheless, let's get into this video. There's a video that is the epitome of what I'm talking about from CBS Sports. I don't know the name of the show. Quite frankly, I've only seen their clips on Twitter. I don't know how popular the show is, but let's check it out.
I focus more on the fact he said we're ready to move on twice. It's over.
But where's he going to go?
He's either going to be released and go to Seattle or Carolina, or they're going to trade him.
I know, but nothing's materialized yet.
I guess they're waiting to try to make a trade for something.
Well, like, here's the thing, right? There's one, like, this is what I don't understand about the waiting. Eventually, what's the cliche? You cut off your nose to spite your face. You just had 12 spring practices, right? You just had your mandatory minicamp. If you really are thinking that Baker Mayfield could compete for your starting job, don't you want him in there for that kind of stuff? By the way,
Allah, so she brings up, I think, what is a fair point, right? Which is what the Browns' leverage truly is in any type of trade talks, is that you can wait and you will not have to trade for Baker Mayfield, right? I think that people underestimate the Browns, like, are going to cut Baker Mayfield when it comes to September. I think some people have their head in the sand about it. You know, I get comments all the time on my main channel whenever I talk about it that, oh, Andrew Berry's smart. He'll waste the roster spot to keep Baker Mayfield just to have a trade leverage in case somebody gets injured. I think that's a rather ridiculous way to go about it. I think if this thing goes to September, he's not traded, he'll get released. But the leverage the Browns doesn't have versus don't have is not the fact that they'll release him, right? Because everybody knows once this comes down to it, by September, Baker Mayfield will be released. The question is when, right? The Browns can wait all the way up until the middle of camp. They can wait until September. But if the Browns do wait till September, the leverage in the Baker Mayfield trade then becomes, okay, do you want to trade for Baker Mayfield right now and have him be your starter? And he'll start and go through camp and be ready to go once the season starts, now that he's fully back from his labrum injury that's been reported. Or do you want Baker Mayfield in September when he's learning a whole new offense throughout the month? So maybe you can force him out there early. You know, once you sign Baker Mayfield, your fan base is going to want him out there early. So do you want Baker Mayfield in a situation where he could be prepared and go out there and be the best version of Baker Mayfield that he could be? Or do you want Baker Mayfield in a situation where He's probably going to need 4 to 6 weeks to get prepared to be out there, but he's a big enough name that if the quarterback play is not playing well, and let's face it, the two teams we're talking about are starting Drew Lock and maybe Matt Corral or Sam Darnold. And like, no disrespect to those two guys and no disrespect to Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield's much better than those guys. I know people think I'm low on Baker. I think I'm just realistic on what he is at this point and what he isn't. He's much better than Sam Darnold, right? So people are going to want him in instead of Sam Darnold. And let's say Sam Darnold, which is realistic, stinks the first 2 weeks. All of a sudden, you're trying to force Baker Mayfield in there under 2 weeks of the system. How's that going to work out? It's not going to work out well. Somebody's going to get fired. It's going to be a disaster. So if you want to avoid a disaster, right, which is bringing in Baker Mayfield very late in the camp and starting him much earlier than you have to, because again, if your fan base sees Baker Mayfield or Drew Lock, they're going to want Baker Mayfield in as soon as possible. If your fan base sees Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, they're going to want Baker Mayfield in there as soon as possible, because mediocre seems much better than abject awful, right? Which Baker Mayfield has the potential to at least be mediocre, if not just a little bit better than that. Then you're not going to be in the same amount of trouble during the season. So I think a lot of people look at this and they look at the leverage wrong with the Baker Mayfield situation from the outside looking in, and they think of it as, oh, well, the Browns have to cut him anyway. What leverage do they have? Yeah, but when is the important part? When is the leverage? You can get him in September for free. You know what I mean? The Browns would cut him and you would get him for free. But what position does that actually put you in when it comes to Baker Mayfield? The same thing goes. So if you want to get Baker Mayfield in a reasonable time frame, you got to trade for him. That's the leverage. I don't think enough people have talked about that aspect of it. I think she touched on it right there. I got to give her credit for that. But let's listen to the rest of this clip.
Deshaun Watson, reportedly, according to all the reporters in Cleveland, he was taking all of the reps during those 12 spring practices. If you had any inclination that he was going to be suspended for the year, wouldn't you give Jacoby Brissett a few of those? That's just being smart to me. Anyway.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. But I don't think they want Baker in there.
Okay, I think this is one of those sports talks take that really only makes sense in a sports talk environment. And there are a lot, and I'm sorry, I just paused it like 5 seconds after I unpaused it, but this is another thing I wanted to get on. This is one of those sports talks takes. Well, hey, it's OTAs. Why is Deshaun taking all the snaps? Why not give Jacoby Brissett three reps? Okay, Jacoby Brissett's a veteran. He's been in this league for a while. What the hell is he going to do with three reps? What them 3 reps going to change, right? Like sometimes we overthink this to a point, but Jacoby Brissett getting 2 extra reps with the starters is not going to help anything. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make anything different. The fact is that if Deshaun Watson gets suspended indefinitely, he will no longer be able to practice with the team once the indefinite suspension is handed out. Now, if he's suspended for a set of regular season games, he will be able to practice throughout training camp, so he will still be in there. But if he's suspended indefinitely for a year, or more, well, indefinitely has no time frame, but let's say indefinitely for a year or calendar year, right? Then the reality is, and even I don't even know if you can, if that's true. Like, I think you can still participate in off-season activities if you're indefinitely suspended. But let's say that you can't. Okay, then Jacoby Brissett's going to get all the snaps during training camp. It's settled, right? Or if Deshaun Watson's going to be out there for 12 games, then Deshaun Watson needs all the snaps during training camp. If Deshaun Watson's going to be out there for 8 games, he's going to need all the snaps. You see what I mean? If Deshaun Watson's going to be out there for any period, he needs all the snaps. He does. Because even if that's the case, okay, let's say during training camp, you go the 3 weeks, the 3 preseason games, you prepare like it's a regular season. You know Deshaun's going to be out for 8 games or whatever it ends up being. Let's say it's a less than 1 year suspension. Let's say it's 8 games, right? He's suspended for 8 games. You give him the first 2 preseason games, or maybe even the first 3 preseason games, all the preseason games. And then after that, you have those extra 2 weeks of practice before you get into your game week. That's where you'll start to transition into Jacoby Brissett once you get into the game week preparation, which the media can't really be there and report on. So the idea that like Jacoby Brissett getting these snaps and like right now matters, I always push back on crap like that because that's a sports talk take. That's a take that only matters in sports talk, but that's just not how any team goes about it.
For anything. Also, if it's a 2-year deal, Baker's going to be a free agent after this year.
Right.
They're not going to re-sign Baker Mayfield.
No, they won't.
So they need a 2-year solution anyway. There's also, I just don't buy there's all this talent around them because I know Kareem Hunt's going to be a free agent because he's on the trading block right now. They have Nick Chubb, but they've had Nick Chubb and it doesn't mean anything. Myles Garrett is great.
Whoa.
Does that really guarantee anything?
Okay, huh? What? What does this mean? Okay, so let me rewind that and make sure I heard him right.
After this year,
right.
They're not going to re-sign Baker Mayfield.
No, they won't.
So they need a 2-year solution anyway. There's also, I just don't buy there's all this talent around them because I know Kareem Hunt's going to be a free agent because he's on the trading block right now. They have Nick Chubb, but they've had Nick Chubb and it doesn't mean anything. Myles Garrett is great. Does that really guarantee anything?
Okay. First he says, I don't buy that there's this much talent in Cleveland, and like immediately list a former rushing champion, the guy who had 1,500 yards, a couple in like the last two years in a row or something like crazy like that. Nick Chubb's been incredible. And then Myles Garrett. I mean, that's enough for most people, right? Now, Dearness Johnson is somebody I think people sleep on a lot. That's the Browns' technical third string running back. You know, he ranked 9th in PFF grade of all running backs last year, right behind Nick Chubb. Also had his plus 5 yard per carry sample per average, and he was pretty goddamn good last year, right? But nonetheless, that's just the running back room. She's going to bring up, I think, Amari Cooper has been added. But that's wild to me. He's not sold on the Browns' talent, even though he can name all of the Browns. Okay, let's rewind it. Let me make sure I'm giving him his just due.
The receiving core was great when Odell was there and healthy. I don't know. I feel
they traded for Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper. It's not a great roster in my opinion. It's an okay roster.
I'm sorry.
And healthy. I don't know. I feel
they traded for Amari Cooper.
Garrett is great. Does that really guarantee anything? The receiving core was great when Odell was there and healthy. I don't know.
All right, man. This man just didn't watch the team. All right. Look, I have made arguments in defense of Odell Beckham a lot. I could never describe the wide receiving room under Odell. Well, while Odell was with the Cleveland Browns as great. It just never performed to that level. Now, some of that, I would say a good portion that had to do with the quarterback room. But great? Nah, this is somebody who's been watching from the outside looking in, listening to popular takes about the Browns from a bunch of people who don't watch the team that much. And look, I get it. There's a lot of teams, a lot of games. It's hard to stay educated on everything. But you know, also you don't have to speak so definitively about things you don't know that much about, right? And that's just what he got caught up in here. To say the Browns don't have this talent, that you're not sold on it, to say that Nick Chubb being on your team doesn't mean anything is like patently ridiculous, because everybody likes to bring up the record of the Cleveland Browns since 2018 and contribute that to Baker Mayfield. But the Pro Bowl players that they drafted in that draft were not Baker Mayfield. It was Denzel Ward and it was Nick Chubb. Straight up. It was Denzel Ward and Nick Chubb. So since they added those 2 Pro Bowl players plus Jarvis Landry in free agency, the Browns have been a dramatically better team than what they have been, not just in the 2 1-win years, but also with the 1 1-win year and the 1 and 31, whatever that was to y'all. But also in the years preceding that, the Browns, just this era of the Browns has just been much better record-wise than the last 20 years of Browns history since they've added Nick Chubb. Myles Garrett was added in 2017. He didn't really impact winning his first year because he was injured a lot, but then he came back in 2018, really impacted winning. So what I struggle to grasp is, how does having Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb, you can argue that Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in football. You can argue that Nick Chubb's the best running back in football. How does that not help you in any way? I want to know, like, if this is stuff that happens to the Browns, and I'm not trying to say woe is the Browns, but this is stuff that happens to franchises that people like don't feel are top tier franchises, right? Because we would not talk this way if Bill Belichick had Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb and maybe age Cam Newton at quarterback, right? We would not talk this way if this were the Pittsburgh Steelers. We would not talk this way about a bunch of different teams. But since it's the Cleveland Browns, it means nothing to have Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb. Just a patently ridiculous take. But you'll hear this a lot. And look, this is what happens when the train is overwhelmingly negative towards your organization, whatever team it is that you cheer for. Everybody is just eager to say that everything associated with your organization is trash. And yeah, you can have negative thoughts about how they did Baker Mayfield. I guess you can have negative thoughts about the Deshaun Watson situation, but don't let that pour into disrespect of Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb. I'm just saying, I think this Browns roster is going to be much better with or without Watson this year than a lot of people expect. And I think that, takes like this are going to be used. This could age like milk. Who knows? But I think that this gentleman is going to be wrong in the long run. But we will see what this is. But that's the first edition of the new Worst Take. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What guests do you want me to have on this channel? Who do you want to see in here? And what do you want to see me react to next? Let me know in the comment section below. But y'all have a great day. Have a good night.